Today we're going to be talking about something that has absolutely gripped YouTube, Twitter, you name it. Anywhere from the mainstream media to, again, social media, to governments and banks and your job and everything that you can think of has been infected with this idea of social justice. And I want to first off start by clarifying that I have no problem with the concept of social justice because we have always had social injustice, and we always will. It's no different today than it was in Roman times. You have the rich, you have the poor, you have the vast amount of people in the middle that holds it all together. But we have been hijacked, sort of say, by what I would consider a very small group of people. Overall, out of the 330 million Americans that inhabit this country, I would go so far as to say maybe 10%, maybe 20%, could be 30, but not the majority of Americans have this idea of victimhood, of identity politics, of the sheep who cried wolf. I don't say boy, I say sheep. Because in SJW, their logic is very sheepish. It's follow the leader. And you have all of these people on Twitter, and you have all of these actors and actresses who have a platform that want to spread this idea that the entire world is ran by angry old white men. But what is a social justice warrior? And what is it not? Well, I don't have to explain to you what a social justice warrior is, obviously, because I think everybody knows. Again, I'm not against social justice. I am against social justice warriors. Because at the end of the day, it is not about changing anything. It's about someone playing victimhood, claiming someone is a sexist or a bigot or an ist or an ism. And this has gone rampant over the last few years. But where did it come from? Where did these people come from? They didn't just pop up out of nowhere overnight. I believe that the whole phenomenon of the SJW movement most likely started with the introduction of political correctness. This idea that you have to be kosher in everything that you say, that you have to watch your words. We live in a society today where literally one sentence, one tweet can ruin your career. And this is why I'm not really on Twitter. I have a Twitter account. I think I tweeted, I have maybe 4 tweets. And then I just said, nah, I'm done. Because it just doesn't matter. The whole concept of SJWs, it doesn't matter because they're not actually looking for social justice. They're looking for attention. So this whole notion of political correctness, I couldn't tell you when it specifically started, but probably in the late 90s going into the early 2000s, we started cropping up this concept of you have to be politically correct. You have to mind what you say, and you have to pander to certain groups. And there are a lot of people that don't do this. We had Stephen King recently went on a tweet about how identity politics is not good, and he was against it for some reason. I didn't read it. I don't care about, as far as that goes. But what I did pay attention to was the reaction that Twitter and anybody else just lambasted him. And this is what happens on a daily basis. The whole concept of the logic and mindset of an SJW is that if you do not agree with my worldview, if you do not adhere to my opinion, you are a insert whatever. You are an ism. You are an ist. You're a blankophobe. And a lot of people are just confused as to where this came from. How did it begin? Will it end? Well, it definitely will end. There's a famous saying, get woke, go broke. And unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, that's true. Because, again, the vast majority of Americans, they don't adhere to that. They don't care. But why do we have social justice warriors? Well, I'm going to give you a concept. It's a quote. I couldn't tell you who said it. It doesn't matter. The quote goes like this, and I want you to pay attention because it's going to do more for your psyche than me trying to break down statistics or anything like that. It's just a simple philosophical quote. And it's this: hard times create hard men. Hard men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. You see, it's a cycle. This overwhelming, attack on trying to create all these different pronouns and genders and stuff like that. Personally, I don't care. You know, if you want to dress like a woman and you're a man and you want to be called a woman, I have no problem with that. If you want me to say, I would rather you not call me sir, I would rather you call me ma'am, that's fine. But to force it upon another person is the epitome of what tyranny is. You see, language is not something that can be forced. Language has to evolve naturally. Jordan Peterson talked about this, about forcing someone to use pronouns in a language where it hasn't naturally evolved, the fluid language. People won't accept it because you're telling us to accept it or else. The only problem is that unlike a lot of the other people that I watch on YouTube and stuff like that, I don't have a platform. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't need them. I don't do it for money. I'm not looking to monetize my videos. And so we have to go back to, well, let's look at the Bible. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I'm not a Christian, but I was. A very devout Christian. I know the Bible very well. Let's go back to Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole concept of it being a city full of sin. And you have all of these people who are homosexuals and doing all types of things that the children of God saw as evil. That's no difference between that and now, right? We live in a society where people can be anything they want. People can do anything they want. And go back to that quote. Think about that. That's why we have SJWs. Because we're in a place in history, in our time, in the timeline of American history, where you have the freedom to bitch and complain and raise all of these concerns about the injustice that you believe is wrong. We have the freedom. We have the luxury to do that. I've never heard of an SJW or any of the colleagues of that group go over to a country where women are oppressed and put up their signs and stuff like that. You see, we are in easy times, going into hard times. We have weak people. Easy times breeds weak people. Most people don't even know how to start a fire. If, for whatever reason, the electric grid just blew up, right? And we were out of power for 4 months. Do you know how many people would die over a can of beans? You know how many people would kill each other over the last can of Spam? It's because we live in easy times. And I am not trying to generalize that everybody is having an easy time. There's obviously people that are struggling. But by and large, you have the freedom to express yourself however you want. And when you're given that freedom, and there isn't this overreaching or overarching pressure for you to be more, I don't know, just more in the moment and focus on things that actually matter. We have that freedoms. Anytime you live in a society and any time in history where that society has easy times, they have the luxury to focus on other things that just don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's not to say that social justice doesn't matter. I think that we have a lot of equality, and we have a lot of inequality. It started a lot with the whole women's rights and women aren't equal, and I have all these videos that I've watched of people making their points and coming up and being made a fool of because it doesn't have any foundation in fact. Do men get paid more than women? Probably. In certain areas, yes. But why is that? Men and women are different. We are inherently different. We're all the same, essentially, being that we're human beings. But women think differently than men. In the STEM fields, which if you don't know what a STEM field is, it's science, technology, engineering, and mechanical, I think. But anyway, men tend to flock more towards that field because it appeals to them more. Women tend to do things that are more on the compassionate side. Nurses. Nurses is a completely female-dominated profession. Men don't get paid more in that field than women. I was in the medical field for 10 years, so I can speak on this with authority. You hire a nurse that has a bachelor's and has 4 years of experience. You hire a man and a woman with the exact same experience, the exact same amount of education, they will get paid the same. There's no difference in their pay. You get hired for McDonald's. You won't get paid more because you're a guy. That doesn't exist. There's no inequality of income when it comes to that. Now, what they try to focus on is the income equality of like corporations and stuff like that, boardrooms and the higher paying upper echelon tier of jobs. And the truth is that men work more. Men work more because in general, men want to succeed more in that field. And I'm going to go on an opinion here and say because of power, right? Because we have this concept in our country that money equals power. The more money you have, the more influence you have, the more power you have. Men tend to work over their allotted time. They stay at the office later. They're there to make that buck and to climb their way up into the ladder of the corporate world. Women, not so much. Women are more concerned with being with their families, being with their loved ones, doing things. Women don't work as much. They don't work as hard, not because they're inferior or because they can't. It's because I think they're smarter than men. I think they just realize, look, we can't be putting all our time into this office. I got shit to do. Whereas men is like, no, I'll go on that vacation once I get that promotion. So in that area, yes, probably men do get paid more, but they work more. Here's the thing, you cannot have equality. It doesn't exist. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't exist. Do you know why? Because it never has. Show me any society where men and women were 100% equal across the board. I'll wait. Doesn't exist. Inequality is an ingredient for the recipe of society. It's always existed, and it always will. This whole concept that you can fight poverty, you can't. Poverty has always existed. So long as we have money, you will have the rich and you will have the poor. You will have the haves and the have-nots. Now, if you want equality across the board, well, then you need to have one person and clone them 330 million times. That's how you'll have equality. If it's all the same person. It's the only way. Here is this weird thing, is that when you say that, these SJWs, they just jump up and they scream to the top of their lungs. It's unfair, it's this, it's that, and it's the blame game, because an SJW logic cannot accept fault. They can't do it, nor can they accept failure. And so we've come to this threshold where all of these groups are saying all of these great things on the surface about how women should be treated better. People of color should be treated better. People who have different sexes should be treated better. And that's fine. And that's something that we should work towards. But we'll never solve it. We'll never solve it. And that's not pessimistic. That's just being a student of history, as unreliable as it is. I don't have any doubt that European white males live in societies that are patriarchal. That's absolutely true. But there's also been matriarchal societies. Did you know that in the Philippines, it's more of a matriarchal society? I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about families. I'm talking about their culture. There are a lot of women who run the families, who, say what they say goes. But the truth is that SJWs only exist because they have the freedom to exist. And so long as we live in easy times, where things are not hard, not like they could be. And here's what I mean when that quote earlier. I personally believe that we're overdue for a recession in the economy. At the best, we'll have a recession. And that's not me going on a limb and guessing. And you just look at it. The financial markets reset every so often, just all the way down the line, all the way back to history. You can look at, we've had currency resets constantly. But let's go on a limb and say that we have a collapse. Now, on a collapse, all of these SJWs will disappear. They won't exist anymore. They won't exist because they won't have a platform to exist. Because now, if you have a collapse and food stops coming and those grocery stores don't have food in it anymore because those trucks aren't coming. Internet. What are you going to do? Who do you bitch to when everybody is fighting over a can of beans? And this is the problem with, it's a paradigm. Because not the single social justice warrior goes out and protests anywhere outside of a country where they don't have the freedom to do it. And I mean freedom as in no repercussions. Now, I have nothing against Islamic countries, but Islamic countries are a lot different than countries of the West. Some of these countries are ruled by Sharia law, where women are oppressed, where people who are homosexual get thrown off roofs. And that's not hyperbole. It really happens. And so long as we continue to be free and unabided by hardship, it will always exist. And if we do have a collapse, well, that's hard times. It's going to create hard men. And I don't say men just as men, I mean human beings. There won't be a place for it anymore.